Good afternoon, everyone. The first item of business is members' business debate on motion 18355 in the name of Alexander Stewart on the 100th anniversary of the Royal Air Force Benevolent Fund. And this debate will be concluded without any questions being put. Would those members who wish to speak in the debate please press the request to speak buttons. And I call on Alexander Stewart to open the debate for around 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I am delighted and grateful of the privilege of being able to open this highly poignant members' business debate today. I would also like to pay tribute to those from the Royal Air Force Benevolent Fund who have chosen to attend and support us in the gallery this afternoon. Almost exactly a year after King George V authorised the creation of the Royal Air Force, Lord Tennyson and King George VI, the patron, formed the organisation known as the Royal Air Force Memorial Fund. One of the RAF Memorial Fund's objectives was the raising of a memorial to airmen who died in the First World War. This magnificent monument, which was completed in 1923, can be seen on the Victoria Embankment in London today. In this new welfare fund's first year, expenditure was £919, which was a considerable sum of money in those days. The fund's first welfare assistance was a shilling a night for lodgings to give to the recipients a chance to seek work. Other examples of early assistance included money to provide the beneficiary with tools of their trade and the repairs to a pair of working boots. Nowadays, Deputy Presiding Officer, the Royal Air Force Benevolent Fund is the RAF's leading welfare charity. They provide financial, emotional and practical support to serving and former members of the RAF, regardless of their rank, and in addition, their partners and dependents. Her Majesty the Queen is the current patron of the fund, and it received its royal charter in 1999. It was updated in 2008 by the addition of a new charitable objective permitting the organisation's work towards supporting the well-being and morale of serving RAF personnel. In Scotland, for example, the Benevolent Fund spent over £1 million supporting 290 people directly, with supporting ranging from housing to care home top-up fees, as well as mobility and adaptations in homes, so individuals can live more independently. They have also supported thousands of veterans with grants provided to other organisations, such as the Scottish Veterans Residences, the National Gulf Veterans and Family Association, the RAF Widows Association and Reading Force. For serving personnel in Scotland last year, the RAF Benevolent Fund spent £148,000 supporting families at RAF Lossiemouth through individual grants and station grants. They supported the station's Family Day, the refurbishment of the Circle Community Centre, a new play park and the station's cinema club. Personnel at Lossiemouth have also benefited from a whole range of funds services which are available to all stations across the United Kingdom. The high level of assistance given to our Scottish veterans and serving RAF and personnel is a small snapshot of the Royal Air Force's Benevolent Fund's worldwide capabilities and capacity. Last year, the RAF Benevolent Fund spent more than £20.9 million supporting 53,000 members of the RAF family right across the world. The RAF Benevolent Fund also engages with many civilian companies and organisations, including the Church of Scotland, as well as councils and local authorities across a wide range of, even in my own region of Mid-Scotland and Fife, but other parts of Scotland and across the whole United Kingdom. Even with that high level of multifaceted work, Deputy Presiding Officer, there are still a great many people who could benefit from the fund if they were not available to do so, and it's important that we try and identify some of these people. It is for that reason that the RAF Benevolent Fund has launched a new major campaign in its centenary year. They are urging the country to help them repay the debt that we owe to the RAF veterans and their families who have served and who now require help and assistance. They put on the uniform for our country when we needed them. And, Deputy Presiding Officer, it is only right and proper that they know that in their hour of need, they will be supported and they will be looked after by the fund. This campaign, which was launched at the end of June this year, is entitled Join the Search, Change a Life. It calls on us all to reach out to the men and women who served as regulars, reservists, or in the national service within the RAF. We all know that many of these generations are too proud and feel too proud to ask for support. But it's vitally important that we identify who they are and we give them that support that they may require. Maybe they simply don't know that the RAF Benevolent Fund is here to support them. So it is imperative that we identify before it's too late. Since the start of the campaign, more than 5,700 people have been in touch. And out of that, 4,300 have been specific about welfare. Now, it's vitally important that they get that welfare support because, as I say, it may be the housing that they need. It may be some adaptations to the house to get in and out, or the bathroom, or the kitchen. But it's very important that they get that opportunity to live independently and have that opportunity to develop. Now, the three top identified in that was that financial assistance was required, or trying to understand what they're entitled to, and maybe the welfare that they have an opportunity to develop. Living independently is also important, but also social isolation and loneliness. Many people do have that, and we've touched on that here in this chamber many times before, Deputy Presiding Officer, across many of the portfolios of the Scottish Government about trying to identify that. Requests for help have come as far as Canada and South Africa, and research has shown that there is at least 1 in 3 of us know someone who served in the RAF and who could contribute or seek some support. So in conclusion, Deputy Presiding Officer, much of this truly phenomenal work that the Royal Air Force Benevolent Fund is involved in goes unsung. However, I would like to take this opportunity to wholeheartedly congratulate and commend not only the RAF Benevolent Fund as an organisation, but also its staff and its volunteers, because they are the ones who go the extra mile to support. They are the ones who are making a difference on the ground across communities and across constituencies. And that will ensure that the welfare and well-being of the entire RAF family is looked after for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Stewart. We move to the open debate and speeches of around 4 minutes, please. Keith Brown to be followed by Maurice Corrie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm delighted to be able to speak in today's debate and to commend the Royal Air Force Benevolent Fund on reaching its 100th anniversary, and to congratulate Alexander Stewart on getting this debate today. Given the previous work I've done with veterans, I'm very aware of and I greatly appreciate the work done by the RAF Benevolent Fund. It's been instrumental in providing excellent emotional, financial and practical support for serving members and veterans and for their families. And I suppose the debate itself gives us the opportunity to reflect on the past 100 years on the role of the RAF and the role it's played in situations of war and conflict, and more recently when deployed to situations of natural disaster and emergency. We should also reflect on the bravery, strength and determination that every member of the RAF has shown and continues to show in deeply difficult and demanding circumstances. I do recall back in 1982 in San Carlos Bay in the Falklands, waiting on the next air raid warning red, and the latest foray from some very brave Argentinian pilots, and to see the relief shown when the RAF was coming to our defence in some very difficult circumstances. As today's debate notes, one of the first actions of the RAF Benevolent Fund was to do those things which are so important to people, not only once they've left the armed forces, but sometimes when they consider whether they want to have a career in the armed forces, and that's to provide the support to people in difficult circumstances. It's right that they do that, and it's right that as a society we continue to recognise the personal sacrifices that service women and men continue to make every day. But perhaps one of the most daring examples of the RAF's courage taking place was during the Cold War and the Soviet blockade of Berlin, when RAF planes were part of heroic efforts to provide Western-controlled Berlin with supplies. They transferred over 400,000 tonnes of cargo into the city, flying more than 30 million miles and spending more than 200,000 hours in the sky. For my part, I am very proud that the Scottish Government's commitment to the armed forces and veterans community is a matter of public record. The appointment of a Scottish Veterans Commissioner was the first of its kind anywhere in the UK, and our mental health and related provision for veterans is acknowledged as some of the best in the UK by the Forces in Mind charity. The Scottish Veteran Fund has provided over £1.4 million in grants to more than 150 projects, helping veterans transition to civilian life. But we know that some service members' sense of duty extends well past their time in the forces. And as Alexander Stewart rightly said, they often feel they are undeserving of the benefits and entitlements that they are due. And that means that the uptake of these benefits is often not what we would wish to see. And that's why the role of the Benevolent Fund in providing quality advice to serving members and veterans regarding welfare benefits has been crucial in ensuring they get the support they are entitled to and that they deserve. Their support for and funding of the Armed Services Advice Project, for example, is of particular note and very strong, in particular in Stirling, where they've worked tirelessly with a number of other organisations to improve veterans' access to entitlements. I also enjoyed celebrating the remarkable success of the RAF in a debate in this chamber in 2014. Particularly encouraged to notice the RAF Benevolent Fund Centenary campaign, of course, Join the Search, Change a Life, which aims to reach up to 100,000 veterans and families that they estimate are currently missing out on support. Inspiring campaigns like this can truly make life-changing differences to individuals and are illustrative of the way in which the fund has positively impacted the lives of so many for so long. And Alexander Stewart mentions that 1 in 3 of us will know somebody who served in the RAF, and I would encourage everyone in that position to make sure that any RAF veterans that they know are aware of the campaign which I've just mentioned. They will be aware of the Benevolent Fund because it's such an integral part of service in the RAF, and they will be aware of the significant contribution that it's made to the life of many veterans. They should also, though, be aware that as a society, we have a duty to provide for and empower those who have given so much. And their enduring commitment to meeting this over the past 100 years marks the RAF Benevolent Fund out as a very important organisation for veterans. So it's right that today we celebrate this. I'd conclude my remarks by extending my personal congratulations to the RAF Benevolent Fund for 100 years of commendable work, to wish it all the best for the next 100 years, and to hope that they continue to help veterans across Scotland and the UK.
Maurice Corrie, followed by David Stewart.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I too thank my colleague Alexander Stewart for putting this motion forward today. It is a great privilege to celebrate the upcoming 100th anniversary of the RAF Benevolent Fund in the Chamber today, and especially with myself being a veteran. The RAF, as the oldest independent air force, has long been a staple of Britain's security and strength. Its servicemen and women, as with other armed forces personnel, show extraordinary bravery and commitment on our behalf to our country. I am sure that we all today are immensely grateful for their efforts. It is no surprise that with these duties come certain pressures and burdens. With frequent moves, long work hours and separation through deployment, the RAF family as a whole, veterans along with their loved ones, often need help and support. Indeed, the RAF Benevolent Fund has estimated as many as 100,000 RAF veterans alongside their families are in urgent need of possible life-changing support. The emotional and this support, whether emotional or practical or financial, is what the RAF Benevolent Fund has and will continue to provide. At its heart, its central vision is this, that no member of the RAF family will ever face adversity alone. And I was delighted to visit RAF Lossiemouth earlier this week and meeting crews on the Typhoon squadrons who are our frontline team who work 24/7. And it was very, very impressive. And the families who support them do an incredible job. The RAF Benevolent Fund offers a truly impressive breadth of welfare, spanning generations from old to young. This included contributions towards housing and adaptations of youth facilities and also care services and respite breaks. Among its many services, the Benevolent Fund takes great care to offer a special strand of support to RAF couples. These couples can face additional challenges to their relationship, often tested through long distance. But through the Benevolent Fund's partnership with the charity Relate, its online course, Building Stronger Families, offers welcome guidance. It is designed to help couples navigate through common issues before they become detrimental to their relationship. So far, more than 5,600 servicemen and women, along with their families, have used this relationship support service. In addition to this month sees the beginning of a new wellbeing and employment workshops for partners of the RAF personnel, organised by mentors who can share insight into the RAF life. These workshops encourage partners to recognise their skills and strengths and the mental barriers they feel hold them back. Children are at the very centre of RAF families, and it's an important point to make, often face their own unique set of difficulties. Life on an RAF base, as I saw yesterday, can understandably feel isolated, especially at a young age. Long-term separation from a parent while continually starting new friendships is certainly not easy. To lessen these challenges, the RAF Benevolent Fund has channeled funds into Airplay, a youth support programme geared to RAF children. In connection with the charity Action for Children, Airplay encompasses childcare centres, play parks and activities based on or surrounding RAF stations. Complete with trained youth workers, this work allows for childcare that favours affordability, opening the way for stability and support. And perhaps the RAF Benevolent Fund is seen at its most compassionate in the case of an injury or a death of a loved one. In the whirlwind of a situation that one may not have planned for, the Benevolent Fund comes alongside and offers much needed support. And whether it be financial help for funeral costs or purchasing an accessible house or assisting with further education, the Benevolent Fund also has shown its sincerity and commitment to the RAF family. At these times of difficulty, this charity gives valuable time for loved ones to rebuild their lives. And all in all, the work of the RAF Benevolent Fund is incredibly far-reaching. The charity prizes safeguarding family relationships. It encourages employability and aims to prevent feelings of isolation. It strengthens mental and physical well-being and boosts morale. In conclusion, Deputy Presiding Officer, without the Benevolent Fund, I find it very hard to imagine that RAF families would feel as cared for as they are. And I'm sure I am not alone in this chamber when I hope for another 100 years of this inspiring charity. Thank you.
And the last of the open debate contributions is from David Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and could I congratulate Alexander Stewart for securing this important debate and for his comprehensive and thoughtful speech. Like most members in the Chamber, my interest in the debate is personal. My father did his national service with the RAF at Kinloss as a fresh-faced 18-year-old over 70 years ago. And during my last year of school in the Highlands, I thought seriously about joining the RAF, but instead I chose the less hazardous conflict zone that comes with a career in politics. However, during my time in Westminster from 1997, I relished the opportunity to serve with the RAF for 2 terms as part of the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme, and I welcome the set-up of the Scottish Scheme in Parliament early this year and this session, and I hope that members on all sides of the Chamber will volunteer to take part in it. During my involvement with the Westminster Scheme, I had direct experience of RAF Kinloss and Lossiemouth, as well as a memorable week in Basra in Iraq, which I will speak about later in my speech. During that time, I flew in a Tornado fast jet, a Nimrod maritime aircraft, and a Sea King search and rescue helicopter. On my last day with the RAF, the Sea King that I was involved in had an emergency in Glencoe, and I vividly remember flying a few hundred feet above Loch Ness on the way to Glencoe and observing at first hand the bravery, the expertise and professionalism of the pilots and the winch crew as they saved the life of a young Swiss mountaineer who had fallen and suffered severe facial injuries. So my experience was a brief snapshot, but it gave me a tremendous admiration for the armed forces and for veterans. And as others have said, not least Keith Brown, we should remember that people do not stay in the armed forces forever, and our responsibility to people who have served our country does not stop when they leave the service. And the covenant that we make with those in the service community does not stop when they rejoin civilian life. That's why we should celebrate and recognise the centenary of the RAF Benevolent Fund. Their vision, as we've heard, is that no member of the RAF family should ever face adversity alone. And of course, the Fund have analysed the challenges and stress facing service men and women, the frequent station moves, the separation from family, the distance from close relatives, irregular shifts, and of course the stress of active service. So I saw this firsthand when I spent a week living in the RAF compound at Basra Airport in Iraq. And I experienced the day-to-day living conditions in a post-war zone, living in a tent in the heat of a Middle East desert, where there were still some concerns about mortar attacks. It put the stresses of civilian life in some personal context. The fund, as we've heard, has identified the most common problems that are faced by serving staff: the marriage or relationship difficulties, partners' problems finding suitable work, not knowing about service benefits, and anxiety and depression. But I believe the fund has reacted with imagination to the survey results by financing pilot station engagement workers, increasing employability and well-being of RAF employees' partners, funding respite holiday breaks, and addressing mental well-being through accessing mindfulness apps. And Winston Churchill, who of course has strong claims for originating the RAF itself, made an impassioned appeal on behalf of the RAF Benevolent Fund in September 1951, just a month before he became Prime Minister for the second time. And he said, I think it's the first time I've quoted Winston Churchill, Presiding Officer, that the fund exists solely to help members of the RAF, men and women in time of need, and their families or dependents when they're in trouble. The RAF Benevolent Fund is part of the consciousness of the British nation. A nation without conscience is a nation without a soul. A nation without a soul is a nation that cannot live. So in conclusion, Presiding Officer, we owe a debt of gratitude and honour to RAF and the role they play in the defence of the nation. The Benevolent Fund is powerful aid to the RAF family when they're in need. Let's never forget their vision that no member of that family will ever face adversity alone.
I now call Graham Day to respond to the debate for around 7 minutes, please, Minister.
Presiding Officer, let me begin by congratulating Alexander Stewart both for bringing forward this motion for debate and his eloquent speech. And let me also thank other members for their contributions. Debates in this chamber on our armed forces and veterans have traditionally highlighted a cross-party consensus around wanting the best for those who have served or are currently serving, and I'm pleased that has very much been the case once again this afternoon. There is no doubt, Presiding Officer, that veterans and their families are a great asset to our communities, making a valuable contribution to life here in Scotland. Equally, there's no doubt as to the importance of the work done here by our veterans' charities in supporting the armed forces and veterans community. I've visited and met with many of them since becoming Veterans Minister 14 months ago, and I'm continually impressed, genuinely impressed, with how each and every day they do everything they can to make a difference to those who require their support. And today's debate highlights a particularly good example of an organisation who do just that. As we've heard, this year marks the 100th anniversary of the RAF Benevolent Fund, having been founded in 1919, 1 year after the formation of the Royal Air Force. The assistance they provide to the RAF community is commendable through the likes of welfare breaks, grants and their advice on support available for those with care needs. I know their efforts are more than appreciated by both serving and former RAF personnel and their families as well. And I very much welcome the focus of Maurice Corrie's speech around the work done by the fund for the families of serving personnel. As colleagues know, the narrative I've sought to create as Veterans Minister has very much been one that encompasses the families, the wider families, not just the serving personnel or veterans. I actually had the pleasure of meeting with the RAF Benevolent Fund Area Director Gavin Davey at the start of August, where we discussed the work the charity does for veterans and their keenness to promote what they do amongst members here in the Parliament. As we've heard, RAF-BF have launched a 3-year centenary project to increase those it supported from 53,000 in 2018 to over 100,000 per annum by 2021. And whilst the television adverts, voiced I think by James Bolam, are quite striking, I do believe all of us, especially MSPs with a veterans locus, have a role to play in awareness raising and helping the Benevolent Fund achieve its ambitious target. Because that would achieve a widely shared goal of getting greater help to those who need it, but perhaps don't realise the opportunity which exists through the fund. The meeting last month proved insightful in a number of ways, but there was a particular fact that Gavin revealed that really stood out to me, and that was that of all the veterans in Scotland, some 20% are ex-RAF. I think that really highlights the close connection Scotland has with the service, one, of course, that goes all the way back to the First World War. And picking up on Alexander Stewart's assertion that 1 in 3 of us knows someone who served in the RAF, like David Stewart, I am one of the one. My grandfather on my father's side served in the RAF during the Second World War, and my dad did his national service in the RAF. And I hadn't quite thought of that connection until Alexander Stewart made that point earlier.
The RAF's history is apparent across all of Scotland, from the borders to the furthest tip of Shetland at Saxe-Abord. There's particular evidence of that in my own constituency, which was home to RAF Teeling, and where the local village hall sports a quite remarkable mural. And an interesting fact that connects both Scotland and the RAF was that the first German air raid on Britain repelled by the RAF during World War II took place not far from here on the 1st of 4th on the 16th of October 1939. And of course, as we've heard, the RAF's presence is still just as evident today with their station in Lossiemouth, which, as was noted previously, has attracted very welcome financial support from the fund. Presiding Officer, given our historic links with the service and the number of veterans in Scotland who proudly say they're ex-RAF, it's been very welcome today that we've had the opportunity to acknowledge and celebrate an organisation whose valuable work has ensured that RAF personnel and their families are supported in a way they so deserve. As I've said before, as Veterans Minister and indeed the Scottish Government is absolutely committed to ensuring that life for those leaving the services is as successful as it can be. And the Government's view is completely in line with the values of the RAF Benevolent Fund. Since the Scottish Veterans Fund was founded in 2008, we've contributed to over 150 projects that help the veterans community, and I'm pleased to say we've committed to supporting the fund for a further 3 years up to 2023. I also recently met with local authority veterans champions to discuss how the Scottish Government can bolster the support they get in their communities to carry out their role and provide the support needed for veterans in those areas. But, Presiding Officer, it would be entirely remiss of me not to acknowledge that in this role I am building on very sound foundations established by my predecessor, Keith Brown, whose knowledge and passion for this subject shone through in his contribution. Presiding Officer, it's our collective duty to ensure we provide the best support we can to those who are in need. We must work in partnership with those who share that common goal to improve the lives of our armed forces community. And we are lucky, we are extremely fortunate that the armed forces and veterans charities we have in Scotland are some of the most highly effective and well-regarded organisations in the sector. I'm sure, therefore, that everyone will join me in thanking the RAF Benevolent Fund for their tireless efforts in supporting our armed forces community and wishing them well for the next 100 years and beyond. Presiding Officer.
That concludes the debate, and this meeting is suspended until 2 o'clock.